Welcome back to If You Give 'Em an Inch, They'll Go a Mile. My name is Nicholas, and I've been coaxed out of hibernation for the express purpose of showing my displeasure about the behavior around these parts. I think If You Give 'Em an Inch, They'll Go a Mile is a great descriptor of many, micro issues on the internet amongst, the left and liberals subsequently, because the internet left will address certain nuanced issues, but then take it too far to the point where their point becomes reactionary. I've absolutely touched on this before. They basically go so enlightened they become reactionary was the wording I've used in the past. In this case, I'm talking about the, analysis on the internet of whiteness, amongst marginalized groups. At first, it was like a reasonable intersectional analysis of whiteness in groups like women and queer people. It's absolutely true that white women, for instance, have a power imbalance in, systemic racism. It's also absolutely true that white people in these marginalized groups might be perpetrators of racial violence or, just racist. And in addition to that, white people in these marginalized groups may try to use their marginalized identity to avoid any consequences for their racist actions. All of the above is true. And people from the targeted racial group have the absolute right to call these people out on their racism and criticize their behavior. Lord knows I'm sick and fucking tired of white gays on Grindr going no femmes, no fats, no blacks, no Asians. But, and say it with me now, if you give 'em an inch, they go a mile. As a whole, white leftists included, people have been starting to use the descriptor white as a way to avoid criticism for blatant bigotry. For instance, a white twink will just merely exist on the internet, and people think that that's a green light to start saying violent things about exterminating gay men. Ironic homophobia has also gone too far, but that's a different thing for a different day. But it's okay, because you put the word white in front of the word gay, right? This is progressive homophobia. Same thing for white women. People will just say blatantly misogynistic shit, and they think that if you put the word white in front of the word woman, that all of a sudden it's okay. We defeated misogyny, boys. You just have to put white in front of the word woman, and it's all good. Patriarchy gone now. Anyways, with the rise of progressive bigotry, quotation marks, come the, ironically, white leftists that want to put out think pieces for brownie points. These videos are some of the most pick-me bullshit I've ever seen in my life. And it's literally just progressive bigotry, similar to the awful takes of men will purposefully wear skirts for the sole purpose of preying on women, which is turf shit. Anyways, here's an example of these bad takes you might see online.
Test to see if you're autistic.
Don't take the test. You're not autistic. I know. You want to think you have something that makes you neurodivergent because that will make you special.
Okay, You could do this, okay. I am going to kind of agree with LJ here. Don't get your goddamn hopes up. But I am going to approach this from a slightly different perspective here, because this did remind me of something that I've been thinking for quite a while, which is that it seems like quite a lot of people, particularly white liberals, will very often take on all these different queer and neurodivergent labels, not for any genuine reason, but because, in my personal opinion, they cannot stand the idea that they might be privileged. And it really seems to stem from the fact that many of these white people have what seems like quite a strong desire to relate to people of color. And so they feel as if they have to be oppressed by something, because, God forbid they are the same type of person that everybody on the left is talking against. It is definitely frustrating because these people do end up delegitimizing those people that actually fall under these labels. And despite the fact that I'm sure plenty of people listening will understand what I'm talking about, virtually all the people that this applies to will think I'm talking about somebody else. They'll all respond saying, yeah, there are people like that. They're so fucking weird. And I don't think these people are pretending. I do believe this all comes from a good place, but I think it also stems from a misunderstanding that somehow the only way you'll have something of value to contribute is if you come from some sort of marginalized group. And I think a lot of people just need to realize you don't need to feel bad just for being privileged. No one's trying to make you feel guilty for something that you had absolutely no control over. They just want you to acknowledge it without undercutting it right afterwards by going, oh, well, actually, I'm also a part of this thing, so technically. LJ touches on this also, or one of the things that's contributing to this are, all those TikToks saying things like 10 signs you have ADHD, 10 signs you have autism, and then it's like 10 different things that are all incredibly common parts of the human experience. Talk to a medical professional.
I could break it down sentence by sentence, but I have three main issues with takes like that. First and foremost, his take essentially accuses queer people and disabled people of faking disability and or queerness for the sake of gaining attention or to feel special in some way. That is a conservative take, straight up conservative. Do you know how many disabled people throughout their entire lives hear that they're faking it for attention? Do you know how many queer people hear that throughout their entire lives? And it definitely gets worse when he implies that there are real queer and disabled people and fake queer and disabled people. Like, come on, bro, be for real right now. Where have I heard that one before? People gain nothing worthwhile by faking queerness and disability. I don't know how many times we have to try to shoot that through your thick fucking skulls. Basically, being disabled and or being queer is not a privilege, and it's certainly not worth being able to say a slur or two. Second issue, and this is kind of a problem within a problem, folks have a habit of doing their structural analysis of oppression through the lens of one singular oppression. For instance, TERFs and RADFEMs do most of their analysis through the lens of the patriarchy, but have very weak analysis on anything else, whether that be disability, queerness, or race. And it definitely feels like this in this type of situation where to this guy and many other leftists and or liberals, they choose one oppression to do analysis from, and then their analysis on everything else is pretty weak, and they have a hard time understanding that there is separate, systemic oppressions that, other people have to endure. White gay people still experience systemic oppression. White disabled people still experience systemic oppression. And it's like, I feel like some of these people are trying to negate that with the whiteness. Maybe they don't experience racial systemic oppression, and within a racial context, there are many criticisms that you can have of certain behaviors, for sure, but I don't think being a white trans woman is going to keep you from being genocided in the United States. I don't know, hot take, I guess. Number 3, takes like these and ironic bigotry to white people of marginalized groups. These people fail to realize that when you normalize that progressive bigotry, it is eventually going to bleed into intersectional members of that community as well. Eventually, not just white gays are going to be the subject of ironic homophobia or shit like that. It's going to bleed into non-white gays eventually as well, because you're normalizing homophobia. I need you to think about it a little bit. Like, you can't soften your homophobia with the word white and it won't eventually affect other parts of that community as well, and that's why it's just homophobia at the end of the day. We have gone beyond reasonable criticism of white people's behavior, and we're now just using this intersectional analysis as an excuse to peddle reactionary takes like a Trojan horse of sorts. Good job, guys. Back to hibernation I go.